I Was Never Alone, by Omar Cuellar. There is nothing more detestable than living alone while being absolutely certain at the same time that I am never truly alone. To be honest, I don't think I have ever been alone, not once, and this has begun not only to unsettle me but to seriously affect my mental well-being. My name is Tom. I was born in 1988 in Providence, Rhode Island. That is where my story begins, though the city of Boston is the reason it begins at all. I am now 36 years old and work for Beacon Consulting Group, a consulting firm in Boston, Massachusetts. This story truly starts on a particular afternoon when a coworker asked me, "Why haven't you ever gotten married? Why don't you have children yet?" I knew perfectly well the real reason I had never married. And perhaps, at that very moment, that reason was watching me from above, silently mocking me and the answer I was about to give. I think it's been my destiny never to start a family. My coworker didn't know what to say, whether out of surprise, or because she suddenly suspected I might be a closeted homosexual, or for some other reason entirely. What is certain is that an expression appeared on her face as if I had just answered her in a foreign language, one she didn't like at all. I had never seen such a look of disgust. She quickly changed the subject and I felt relieved. I had no desire to remember, much less think about, the terrible secret that has been eating away at me since childhood. That afternoon, as usual, I stayed late at the office, waiting for everyone else to leave so I could be alone with my thoughts. And something else. On my desk, next to my computer, sat a can of Red Bull I had been drinking from earlier. My gaze settled on it. I began to think about why I had never married or started a family, and I couldn't help but travel back in my mind to Providence, Rhode Island, to when I was still a child and everything had begun. The first time it happened, I didn't fully understand what was going on. But being an only child with no pets, it soon became very clear to me that the faint breathing I sometimes heard coming from behind the closet or under my bed came from a presence I could neither see nor explain. The only thing I was sure of was that the sound of that breathing was constant. I told my parents what I was hearing. Of course, at first they didn't believe me. But after I convinced them to come to my room and listen carefully, behind the closet doors, through the small window panes, under my bed, they nearly fell over in shock when they were forced to face the harsh and terrifying truth. Their son was not lying. There was nothing and no one in those corners of my room, yet the faint sound of something, or someone, breathing steadily could be clearly heard. Terrified by what was happening, my parents decided to put the house up for sale. They never told prospective buyers what was going on in my bedroom. For the 6 months it took to sell the house, we moved in with my grandparents. On the first night I slept in my new room at my grandparents' house, my mother made sure there were none of those strange sounds coming from any nook or cranny. In those moments she regretted not having had another child who could have kept me company during such difficult and surreal times for the family. "You'll be fine," she told me, trying to sound confident. "If you hear any strange noise again, don't hesitate to wake us. Then you can sleep with us or with your grandparents." I had insisted to my mother that I would be okay alone, even though she had previously offered to let me spend the night in their room. The truth is I felt brave. At that time, though I was only 11 and horror movies had terrified me just a few months earlier, I had recently fallen in love with a book by the writer Howard Phillips Lovecraft, a native of my own city. One of the stories in that book was called The Lurking Fear, and I had quickly identified with the protagonist, who was not afraid of the monster or the unidentified presence hiding and watching from Tempest Mountain. That is how I decided to spend the first night alone in what would be my new bedroom. I still remember it clearly. That night I was having a lot of trouble falling asleep, so I decided to read a little under the dim light of my bedside lamp. Although I had a small desk, I chose to sit on the floor, leaning my back against one of the walls so I could turn and watch the clouds drifting over the neighborhood, now quietly visible through my window in the faint moonlight. I was obsessed with the story I mentioned, The Lurking Fear, so I picked up the book, opened it excitedly, and began reading aloud. Thunder was in the air the night I went to the uninhabited mansion atop Tempest Mountain to find the lurking fear. I was not alone. For foolhardiness was not then mixed with that love of the grotesque and the terrible which has made my career a series of quests for strange horrors in literature and in life. With me were. At that moment, I heard it again. That horrible, maddening sound, like someone or something breathing under my bed. Though I was terrified at first, I gathered my courage, grabbed a flashlight I had stored in one of the desk drawers, quickly turned it on, and aimed its beam into the dark space beneath my bed. Nothing. I couldn't see anything. But I could still clearly hear that awful, ominous sound. I was about to run to my parents and tell them the strange presence was back under my bed, that it had surely followed us from the house they were now planning to sell. But then I remembered how fearless the protagonist was in the story I had just been reading. I wanted to become him. So I came up with a plan, though I wasn't sure it would work. In the dim light of my room, I sat back down in the same position on the floor, my back against the wall, facing the bed where the eerie sounds still came from. And what did I do? I started reading. I read aloud. And I kept reading. Over and over, while that strange sound from beneath my bed continued. Until I finally reached the end of the story, and then the rhythm of the strange breathing changed. It would be many years later, only after I had become an adult, that I would realize the strange presence had experienced an orgasm. That was how I learned the presence liked it when I read aloud to it. From then on, every night I read to it, the way a mother or father reads bedtime stories to their child. Curious about what this unseen presence might look like, I decided one night, after 3 months of reading aloud, to try something new. Instead of reading, I began dancing wildly like a professional ballet dancer while playing Rachmaninoff's Prelude in G minor, Opus 23 No. 5 at full volume in my room. That was when the presence finally decided to show itself. It was a strange creature, black and hairy, not very large, with grotesque, long and fearsome claws. I should never have been frightened by its appearance. Because I was, the creature shyly retreated back into the darkness and vanished into it. Since then, all I can ever hear is its breathing, which accompanies me constantly whenever I am truly alone. That breathing was there the first time I masturbated. That breathing was with me the first time I sobbed alone in my room. Ever since, I read aloud to that creature every night. And even now, at 36 years old, I am teaching it to dance, while it hides behind the air conditioning unit in my office. The creature doesn't know I've been recording it at night. When I leave the office, it emerges from its hiding place and imitates the dance steps I've taught it. Because the creature doesn't know that I consider it my child. A child I began raising when I was 11 years old.